In this video, I'm going to show you how I installed a vapor barrier all around my shed. Now some folks call these air barriers or moisture barriers. It's just a barrier that keeps water from getting in as well as keeping air from getting in from strong winds, but it allows the structure to breathe. I'm using a product from DuPont called Tyvek. I bought this and paid for it myself. I'm not sponsored in any way. This just happened to be the right size for what I needed at my local Home Depot. I think this roll was about 3 feet or so tall, and it came with more than enough length on it to do the entire shed. For fastening it, I decided to use the same nails I was going to use for the roofing felt. A lot of people prefer to use staples when attaching this. I went with these nails because I wouldn't have to put in quite as many, and I already had them. So we're going with these. Before I got started with the wrap, I needed to cut out the threshold on the gable ends. And you may have seen in my previous video about framing these gable ends that I did a little trick when I built these walls in the first place. Before I stood up these walls, I cut halfway through them from the underside, which was going to make it really easy to cut through from the top after it was all stood up and I was at the stage it was time to cut out the threshold. And I did this because I didn't want the saw to come down and scratch up my finish on my concrete and dull my saw blade. So that made cutting this out really easy. You can see I only had to go about halfway through, and then this threshold came right out. So with the thresholds cut out, it was time to measure up and mark the wall where I wanted the top of the wrap to be installed. And I wanted to make sure that the wrap would overlap down beyond the bottom of the wall by about 1 inch. So I marked it so that it would do that, so that any water that gets in on the wrap would come down below the wood and just run down the concrete foundation. Then I used my level to transfer that mark all the way down the wall, and then just stretched out the wrap and met it up with that mark and nailed it in. The process is really pretty straightforward. The one thing you want to do if you are going to nail it is you want to make sure you're hitting studs with those nails. When I installed my sheeting, I was careful to make sure that the lines that are already on the sheeting lined up with the studs inside the walls, and so it was pretty easy because my walls were already marked. If yours aren't that way, of course, you can snap a chalk line or mark them before you do it. So then it was just a matter of working my way all the way around and installing the sheeting, just nailing it in about every 16 or so inches on every stud. Alright, so I finished with the lowest course of my house wrap, and now I'm ready to put it on the next one. The problem is I'm working alone, and trying to hold this and unroll it and hold that up and wrap it around and find things and hammer and nail, there's just too much. I don't have enough hands. So if you're working alone, I've got this neat trick I want to show you that makes installing house wrap really, really easy. And it involves this painter's pole and a clamp. Let me show you. This painter's pole is one of those extendable kinds. You twist this end and it gets longer. If you happen to have one of these laying around already, they're great for this. If you don't, you could use a piece of PVC or even just a broom handle. Anything that is going to fit inside the center roll of your wrap. Slide that in like this. And now, all you need is to put a clamp right down here that'll hold the wrap in approximately the correct height. And then you can roll it out really easily and be able to nail it in. I'm just going to use one of these quick clamps here. So there you go, it's ready to start pulling out, and this clamp will be able to lean up against the wall like this and stay there while I'm busy nailing things in. Once I'm finished with this course, the reason I really like these extendable poles is because then to do the next height, all I have to do is lift the pole up and extend this end, lock it down, and now you're ready to do your top course or your third course. So let me show you how easy it is to use this thing. So I'm going to measure down 6 inches, and I'm just going to make a quick little mark. It doesn't have to be very precise. And I'm just going to do this at each of the corners. Alright, so now that I've got my heights marked, all I need to do is adjust this clamp so that the bottom of the wrap is more or less right in line with that mark. It doesn't have to be perfect. And boy, I'll tell you what, having this painter pole really helped. It was almost like having another person there to hold the wrap in about the right place. And as I worked my way down around the walls, it held up the wrap, close enough to the correct height that it was really easy to stretch it and pull it to exactly where it needed to be. And then it was just repeat the same process I'd done on the first course at the bottom, and repeat that process all the way up the wall. Now I know that there are some of you out there who are watching me install this going, why in the world is this guy putting a vapor barrier on a shed? Well, the answer is because for now, yes, this is just going to be a shed. It's just going to store my stuff. But at some point in the future, I might decide to turn it into a workshop or into a man cave or to some other functional kind of a building where I might want to insulate the interior walls, run some power out to it, maybe install an air conditioner. And at that point, it will be too late to put any vapor barrier into the walls, and I'll really need it at that point. So I decided, rather safe than sorry, go ahead and take the time and get that installed now, and then I don't have to worry about it if I ever decide to use this as something else. Alright, so once I had all of the walls wrapped, it was time to tape up the joints. Now DuPont makes this specialized Tyvek tape that matches really well with this wrap. It bonds very, very tightly, and it's stupid expensive. It was like 20 bucks a roll. I wasn't real thrilled about that, but I decided if I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it right, so I went ahead and bought that tape. Now, I did find that this tape doesn't really like to unroll very well at all, so one trick I used that saved me a lot of frustration was when I was done using the tape for a minute, I would just fold down the end just a little bit, and that would give me a tab to pull on later that made it real easy to start again the next seam that I was going to tape down. So the only note that I have for taping is to take your time and be really careful, because once this stuff sticks, it's like super glue. It does not want to come off. And you want to try and rub out any kind of creases or kind of imperfections. Make it as smooth as you possibly can. Once I finished up the taping, then I just wanted to make sure the gable ends were all covered up as well. This is mostly for driven rain ingress. We do occasionally get driven rain here. Driven rain, for anyone who doesn't know, is rain that is blown hard enough that it's basically raining sideways. And so I wanted to make sure that the gable ends were covered in case the siding had any cracks or leaks that would let water in. There's no real tricks to this particular process. Just hold it up there as best you can, cut it around the things that are already there, and nail it down around the edges. And then tape up all the seams when you're completely finished. So that was basically it. Once I had all the seams taped up, then the shed is ready to start installing trim and siding, and that's what I'm going to cover in my next video. So if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below and click the little bell next to it to make sure you get notified when my next video comes out. And I hope you've learned something. If I did something that was boneheaded, completely wrong, or just plain stupid, by all means, I'd love to hear about it down in the comments. I learn from you, hopefully, more than you learn from me. So let me know if you find anything there that I could improve on. I'd sure appreciate it. And as always, thank you very much for watching.